live from Mike Drucker's hotel room.
Hello.
It's a pretty good day. That's right. The Pockets Full of Soup show about the best days of our lives. So, Mike, you're coming on here to talk about a great day from your life. Now, to lay the ground rules, we're not gonna make you rank anything here.
Right,
it's
yeah.
not like this is the best day I ever had.
Right.
This is about the days that we remember.
Yeah.
Life is full of awful days. And life is even more full, I think, for many of us, of mundane days that we remember pieces
Right.
of. But every now and then there's a day or a part of a day that just sticks in your mind.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that works because I'm not a brain chemist.
Yeah.
Do you know how it works?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, it has something to do with neurons, chemicals, electricities, and electricities, the plural. But for some reason, the story you're going to tell has stuck in your head.
Yeah.
And it's something. Do you ever think you'll forget it?
No.
Okay. Well, let's hear about it, Mike. Tell us about your pretty good day. When did it happen?
I don't remember the exact date. It was March of, I want to say 2000, maybe 8.
Okay. So
maybe 8, maybe 9.
7-8 years ago.
If I looked it up, I could find it, but.
No need to do that.
I interned at SNL for a little while, and then I was working as an assistant. And one of the nice things they let you do is they let you submit Weekend Update jokes. And for about 2 years, I was submitting jokes, and I just wasn't getting anything on.
Before we go on with the day, what's an intern at SNL do?
An intern at SNL does everything from gets coffee, picks up, somebody's like, if they have like medication at the pharmacist, they'll go to the pharmacist. They'll run scripts between cameramen when they're doing the actual show itself. Just run errands in general. You're sort of like on call to almost be a gopher at all times.
You're like a page in medieval days.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Do you get a hat with a little feather, a little flat hat with a feather and a pillow with something on it?
You get a special colored badge that lets everyone know that you're there, but you're not totally there.
Okay, so that lets them know not to say certain things in front of you and
Right.
things like that?
Or
All right.
just not to let you get food first.
So you've been an intern for 2 years. A paid internship?
No.
No. Okay, so how are you surviving?
I was in college, then grad school.
Okay, so you're just living on those student loans?
Living on those student loans, which I'm still paying for.
Yep, I know that feeling. And then one day, after a couple of years as an intern.
After a couple of years as an intern, I graduated and I wasn't there anymore. And then I'd come back as an assistant. I got hired to be like a researcher, which was a cool job. But what's a researcher do? Researcher does. I was specifically a photo researcher. So when it was like, either it was like, a push onto the White House at night, I would find that photo or that footage. Or if it's like, an over-the-shoulder graphic and Weekend Update, that'd be like, today a monkey at a zoo. Like, I'd find like the picture of a monkey, because my job was basically to like go to our graphics banks that we had contracts with, things like AP, Getty, either find the specific moment that they're talking about. If they're like, President Bush fell over this way. And it's like, oh, we have that moment. Or if it's like President Bush signed an agreement. You don't have that moment, but you have like a picture of him signing an agreement. So that was my job.
Wow.
It was a cool job.
That's interesting.
And I wanted to be a comedy writer. Like I knew, I was already doing stand-up and I was like, I want to be one of these guys who's a writer. And I really wanted to be a Weekend Update writer.
And so they let you submit jokes?
They let me submit jokes.
How did that work? Did you just have like the submit joke card and drop in the submit joke box? Or do you just walk up to Fallon and hand it to him? Or what happens?
It used to be faxing. Sometimes people call it a faxer list just because that's what it was called years ago. Like you'd fax your jokes in and then they'd like, and the way it works is every day they email out a list of premises, a list of news stories, but premises in that like the news story is a 1-sentence summary of that thing. And it's everything from like today the president did this, or today this movie star did this, to like things like, people have found the world's fattest dog, like everything from like important news to entertainment to like goofy, Skittles on the highway news. And you're allowed to submit 10 jokes a week. That's it.
Okay.
And I was doing it for 2 years and I got nothing. Just nothing. And I got close once or twice. Something would go to rehearsal, then get cut. Or someone would be like, oh, we love that joke, but, we just didn't have space for it. I'm sorry.
Well, it's a very tight timeline.
It's a tight timeline. And there's people who are paid a lot of money to get those jokes on, and they're much better. Like at the time, one of the writers there is now the head writer at Seth, a guy named Alex Bays, who I consider the best joke writer in the English language.
Wow. Okay. This is the person you're trying to get jokes up next.
You're right. Yeah. Exactly. And there's people like Doug Abels, who's also this amazing joke writer. Jessica Conrad, who's an amazing writer. Like they had all these great people. So you're competing with. It's almost like you're like. It's almost like if you're like auditioning, trying out to be on like a high school football team. and then the other players are in the NFL.
Okay.
You know, and like once in a while you're going to maybe have a moment, but probably not. And most people who submit never get anything on.
Wow, and you've been doing it for 2 years. I'm actually surprised the Writers Guild lets that happen. That's interesting.
It's a gray area.
Oh, okay.
Fewer and fewer shows do it now because of the Writers Guild.
I wondered.
And now that I'm in the Writers Guild, I'm like, of course we shouldn't do this. But like, you know, of course I'm going to close this door behind me. But I like it though, because it is something that you can try to do, and it definitely taught me to like analyze the construction of a topical joke.
Okay.
Because it's much harder than it looks.
Can you describe that process for a second?
The process is sort of like you look at the setup, then there has to be a sort of turn verbally. So if you're like, today, President Trump ordered a hamburger, and like you could say, something like, or is he put it, or there's a different turn, like then this happened. In other words, like you almost have to think of those like little transitional phrases that set up where you're going to go with it and where the person should expect the unexpected thing to come from.
Okay.
And it's really it's not easy to teach, because it's such like a thing where you're like, oh, I sort of sense this is the way that this would turn to get to here, and how to do an economy of words, because the longer the second sentence is, the more the people are forgetting the setup.
Okay.
I've seen my friends who do packets for shows. A lot of times, like they'll write jokes that are much longer than they need to be, and it's almost like, no, you're writing a stand-up joke that requires like an emotion and like then like a follow-through and then like whereas you need to be like, this happened, which means this happened.
So
and
a lot of economy. It sounds
a lot
like
of economy.
writing a good tweet.
It's a lot of it's writing good. That's why you see so many like people like Bays, or like Matt Golditch, who's a Seth writer, who's like really funny on Twitter, and he's a really funny monologue writer at Seth. That's why a lot of those people do well on Twitter, and that's why I consider myself to have done okay on Twitter, is because like I've learned that economy of words, that like here's what you can cut out, but here's what's absolutely necessary to make this funny.
Wow. Okay, so I have interrupted your story twice,
that's
but
okay.
Now we have that back, and I'll keep doing it probably. So you're a researcher at Saturday Night Live after being an intern, and for 2 years you've been faxing these in, and then
and nothing on, and like it's so frustrating because I deep down I don't know if I can do this. I'm doing open mics, I'm doing like small book shows, but I'm not like going on the road and getting paid for stand-up. I started freelancing for The Onion and started making that money that way, which was cool, but like, and I really love The Onion, but I was like, okay, maybe I can just do like internet humor. I don't know if I can do like TV humor, which, now internet humor and TV humor are kind of the same thing because of streaming. But at the time I was like, okay, I can sort of do like in sort of like a ghetto of comedy, like I can do the internet thing where I get paid $25 instead of like on TV where I'll exist forever, like, and that's how I felt when I was like, 22 or 23 or 24.
It was a different world then too. The way we thought about television and the internet were very different then.
Yeah, just a few years ago, but like before, like things like Netflix or Amazon streaming, like we're like, there's a huge gulf.
Yeah.
So, I was really depressed about it because I didn't know if I could do it. It wasn't like I'm so sure of it that they're wrong. I'm like, if honestly before this day I'm describing, if someone had come up to me and been like, you're never going to do it, I'm going to be like, oh, you're right. Thank you for telling me. Almost like if someone's like, listen, you're never going to be a basketball player. You're like, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry that I thought that.
Okay.
So I, it was a day, and like, I was at this point a researcher, so I saw the update jokes, and that was one of the things that was heartbreaking. Was every Saturday I'd come in and there would be a script on my chair, not even on my desk, on my chair, and the reason they gave me the script was because those are the photos I had to research.
Okay.
And you had to research way more photos than they finally used, and that's why I'd often get my hopes up, because like I'd be on the first list, and I'd be like, oh, I have like 1 or 2 jokes on the first list, so oh man, I'm gonna do it, and then like you get cut in the first round, you're like, oh, okay, or you'd get to rehearsal and a joke would die, and then they'd cut it, and you're like, oh. And being part of the process made it so much more painful, because it wasn't malicious. They weren't like, not today, Buster. It'd be like the meritocracy.
When you say a joke would die, you're saying that the rehearsal crowd didn't laugh?
Rehearsal crowd didn't laugh.
I didn't realize that would have that much of an effect on what made the final script. That
Absolutely.
makes so much sense.
Especially for something like Weekend Update, where it's like, with a sketch, sometimes you need the not laugh to build up a beat for something else in the sketch. But for a joke, it's like, nobody laughed. The joke doesn't work. So So this was a day in March, and I don't remember who was hosting. You know, all I remember is sort of this narrow tunnel vision.
Well, it's because this is what was important to you that
to
day.
me.
That's okay. That's how memory works. We can't tell so much of the context. The first one of these I ever did, I told the story of this wonderful day. I can't remember anything that happened before 9:00 in the evening that day.
Right.
You know. And so yeah, please continue.
So I get in. There's a joke in the script. And here's the thing is it's not a good joke. It's kind of a bad joke. And the joke, you know, I'll tell the joke now because if I build it up too much, it'll seem like I'm waiting to hold it. The joke is something along the lines of like 5,000 VHS tapes of the complete like run of the 700 Club, that religious show, the 700 Club, is going on eBay. Here's how that auction will go. Going once, going twice, sold to nobody because no one would want that. It wasn't even my favorite joke in my packet. It was
just the joke
It was just a joke that day. It's not a good joke, but it was on the page.
Well, somebody thought it was a good joke.
Yeah, Seth liked it. So it was in the packet, and I was like, okay, and sometimes that would happen, where I'd see a joke, and I'm like, oh, that's Seth. I wouldn't even get my hopes up. So I saw it in the packet, and I was like, all right, that's not staying. And I think Seth liked it, and Seth knew how to tell it the way Seth tells a joke.
Okay.
And so it was almost like a joke that was bad for me to tell myself, but Seth liked how he told it Seth-wise.
So his cadence, his delivery, it suddenly works.
So their first round, I think they used to call it the bagel read because they'd have bagels and read through jokes and cut, and it made it past the bagel read, and then so it like went to the first rehearsal, not live rehearsal, but sort of like dry run. It went to the first dry run, stayed after that. Went to the rehearsal, and it did fine. It didn't do great, but it did fine. And fine is almost worse than bad because with fine, you have hope. With bad, you're like, okay, you know what? I'm disappointed, but now I can, have the rest of my night. It did fine. And so I was sort of like, well, it did fine. Okay.
And then this Saturday afternoon?
This is Saturday, maybe about 9 p.m. is when rehearsal starts at 8. Updates around 9.
Okay. So it's getting real close.
And 11:30 is air. And by 11:30, everything is locked. Well, not really, but for the sake of like the way this would work.
For the sake of this story, it's
locked. So 9, it does fine. And then like you wait because I'm not in the meetings where they're picking. I'm just in my sort of research art department area where, we have like graphic designers and we have other researchers and like we're all working together. So like we're just waiting for an intern, obviously, to give us a script. So someone who would have been me a couple years ago brings a script and it's in. And I just remember having this moment. And the thing is, things will still sometimes get cut, even if they're in.
Okay.
Like even whole sketches, like sometimes you'll be like, oh, that was a weird edit that Saturday Night Live did there. It's just because like a sketch will run late or someone will break, meaning they'll laugh in the middle of a sketch and that'll stretch it out just a few seconds that they need to cut something. So
it's that tight.
It's that tight.
Wow.
Because it's that tight. So it's in the script and this is the first time I've had something in the air script ever. And I remember being like, don't get your hopes up. This is not a good joke. You don't believe in it. And if something goes awry, this is definitely the first on the chopping block.
Do you still think it's not a good joke, or did you think it was not a good joke because you were setting yourself up for the fall? Honestly,
I think both. I thought it was an okay joke. I don't think I would have submitted it if I hated it. But I also was like, it wasn't even my favorite. I know that it wasn't my favorite joke.
I just know that the idea of 5,000 VHS copies of the 700 Club is a funny idea.
It's a funny idea.
Just by itself.
Yeah.
Just Pat Robertson's face kind of going.
Yeah, exactly.
On all of them. Okay, so you're there. So like, it's the clock is ticking. It's in the script. Might get cut. Who's going to cut it if it gets cut? Who makes that call?
Seth Meyers and a guy named Doug Abels, who was the head writer of Update at the time.
Okay, they'll cut it at the last second to make that.
And Doug is he's still alive. He's like a super cool guy. He's not at SNL anymore. He like left to go pursue his own projects. But he was like, everyone there was always so cool and nurturing about it because they like could tell that I really wanted to be a part of it, but they're not going to put something in the show that doesn't work. This is Saturday Night Live, and whether or not you think it's funny, they're putting what they think is the best forward. They're not going to like, put me. It's not going to be like radio where they're going to like put me out there because it's like inspiring to people.
You're not Rudy. You don't get out on the last play because yeah.
So
you're no Sean Astin.
So the show starts, and I'm like, and Update's not until like about 45 minutes, an hour in. So like, you're like, who cares? Political. Who cares? Let's go. And like the most anxious, like the longest 45 minutes, we get to Update and like my heart's just pounding in my chest.
Or are you just sitting in your office watching?
I was sitting in my office, which, it's sort of this artist bank where we have like 5 or 6 graphic artists who are the people who like, because you give them the graphic, but then they have to format it. So, put it in the box for the Chiron.
For the what on?
The Chiron, like when you see like a thing on the screen that says like, like reporter, or like Chiron's like the name of like when you see something superimposed on the screen.
Oh, okay.
Like when it says
like lower thirds or something
exactly,
like that.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
And so they're the ones who format it. Like you deliver them the raw file that you download off like AP or Getty, and they format it for the director.
Is anybody in the room aware of what's going on with you?
Yeah, because I wouldn't stop talking about it.
Okay. So you're not sitting and silently suffering. Right. No.
Right.
When did you start telling people that it might get on?
I think, my boss was a guy named Tom Wilson, and he was the head researcher, and he had been there for like 20 years.
Okay.
He was like this old dog. He was really cool dude, but he was like sort of like a man's man. Like he definitely voted for Trump. Like sort of like not a bad guy, but like definitely a guy who's like men are men, women are women, and if you're doing something, you say it. So like every day he'd be like, "You got any jokes in?" And he's not being a jerk. He's just being like a man. If that makes sense, you know what I mean?
Right now, all I have is an image of like a Sears Roebuck catalog cover from the 1930s,
right?
With like a guy like fishing, like
but
he's standing in the water, fly fishing, and he's catching like a shark in a freshwater river, like that kind of dude.
And he maybe not. I don't want to say I don't want to like libel him or something and say he voted for Trump, but there's a good chance. But like he definitely he had artificial teeth that got knocked out playing rugby. He had like artificial teeth replacing real teeth that got knocked out playing rugby. Like he was a man.
Okay.
So like every day he'd be like, "You got anything in there?"
By the most stereotypical like definition possible.
Exactly.
All right. So he's there with you every day. He's like, "You got a joke."
You got a joke, and I was like, "No," and he wasn't being a jerk about it. He was just being supportive in the way that he knows how to. And so we'd like.
Did he give you a noogie afterward? Like if you said no?
No. He was just like maybe next time.
All right.
And so So like I'm like pacing and I'm nervous, and like he's kind of making fun of me because like he kind of wants. I think he's not like it's not going to happen. I think he wants to be like let's not put all of our hopes on up there if something goes awry. And so we get to update and like update at the time with Seth and Amy had like sort of like this like very like bombastic music it starts with, and it's just like very like. And I have so many memories just tied to that old update opening music.
Can you hum it?
I can't because it was like all like it's like bells and stuff.
Can you bum it? You're bum.
Like I can't. I can't. I can only hear it.
It's just too beautiful.
It's just too beautiful. So that started, and then like it was like in the middle, and then they get to it, and he tells it, and it does fine. It doesn't do great, but it does fine. But I got a joke live and it's live. Like if they edit it out later, that's fine. But in the live version, it is broadcast to America, and I have won the day. I got a joke on the show, and I remember because we were in an area on a different floor from where they shoot. Like because of the way 30 Rockefeller Center is constructed, like they were taping on the 8th floor, but our artist bank was I think on the 5th floor.
Okay.
And part of it was under construction, but since it was so late at night on a Saturday, that construction area was empty. And I went into this sort of bare floor and like looked out this like row of windows that didn't have any blinds on them, just sort of out at New York City. And I was like, I wrote a joke for television. I got a joke on TV. If I never do it again, I have at least done it once.
Yeah.
Like they had a story about in the news recently about like this. For an NHL team, he's like an equipment manager, and he was like a decade ago, he was a goalie in amateur hockey leagues, and basically both goalies were injured, so they put him out on the ice.
Oh, wow.
And even though that was his only time on the ice, he still was in the record books as an NHL goalie for that moment. And that's how it felt. Like, that's the exact feeling you get where it's like, maybe this is my one time that I get to be a goalie, but in the record books, when all things are considered, like if like God had like a record of every piece of humor ever written for television, that would be mine.
And there you are.
And there I am. And I just remember like looking out at New York and sort of having this feeling of like, I did this. And then I went to like the after party, and like, honestly, nothing in my hierarchy changed on the show because I was already pretty well liked. It's, they knew that I wanted to be a comedy writer. Like they knew that I appreciated what they did, and I was always nice to them. Mm-hmm. I didn't have that, attitude that often cripples a lot of people early on, where they're like, I'm the funniest person in the world. Like I was like, I'm still very meek, but, naturally, but I was like, I went to the party and like, I not like bragged about it. I was like, I wrote a joke for the show. I'm here at the party. Like there's some writers here who had nothing on the show this week. I had more than some of the writers on the show this week, and it was such a moment of like,
Do you remember anyone's reaction to your excitement?
Yeah, they were excited for me because they knew that I was trying for so long. And
Anybody in particular come to mind? Or?
Like Paula Pell, for example. Paula Pell is this comedy writer who's been doing it for decades. I actually wrote with her on the Golden Globes this year, which was awesome because I was like, Paula, we're both here. We're both, and like to say we're equals would be to do her a grave injustice because she wrote for 30 Rock and she wrote for, she came up with, Omeleteville, like that Justin Timberlake thing where he wears like that's her.
Oh wow!
Like she came up with a lot of Debbie Downer. That's her. I'm pretty sure that's her. I could be if I'm wrong. I apologize, Paula. But I'm like she's like a classic.
There's some angry writer out there like
right.
how dare he?
But like Paula is this like classic, awesome writer. And I remember like telling her, I was like, Paula, I got something on. And she was like, that's so amazing. And I was like telling like Simon Rich. And I was like, and Simon's younger than me, but he's a genius. So whatever. And I was like, Simon, I got something on. And I was so excited. And like Seth was like, you did it. You got like Seth like gave me the cue card. He got the cue card. He signed it. And I gave that to my parents. And
Seth, you have the cue card?
I have the cue card.
Oh my gosh, Mike, that's great.
And it was this moment of like, not like, anything's possible or now my whole life's going to be fine or even this is my career, but I have done this.
You did it.
Even if I never do it again, I did it once. And that was the most important thing.
Yatta.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Mike, thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah, of course.
That's a great story. And and the epilogue is, hey, you did end up writing for the show. And now you write for other shows.
Right.
You're writing for, why don't you let people know what you're up to right now?
Right now, I am co-head writer on Bill Nye Saves the World, which is coming to Netflix in the spring, and I'm writing on a show called Adam Ruins Everything on True TV.
Wow. So you are a professional television writer now. Look at you.
That's right.
Holy cow. You ended up working at SNL. You've done all kinds of interesting things. And you also do stand-up, and you're doing Sketchfest this weekend here right now in San Francisco. People can find you other places. Where
on Twitter, at Mike Drucker. On Twitch, if you play games, at Mike Drucker. I am also on Instagram. Mike Drucker is dead.
Mike, I'd say that's a pretty good day.
Yeah, that was a great day.
Thank you for sharing that. Wow, I really got caught up in that.
Yeah.
I want to pick your brain that this isn't the theme of the show. Sometime later, I'd love to hear you talk about the process of how it all works, how it comes together. I'm sure you've been asked this a billion times.
Sure.
Be a fun thing for our audience sometime. But today, I want to thank you for sharing that pretty good day. Folks, if you have a good day you want to tell us about, give us a brief story. Send it to mail@pocketsfullofsoup.com, and we'll read it on the air just like this one we're about to read now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, all. Just a couple of community pretty good days to read to you here out loud from Patrick. A pretty good day I've had was taking my dad to see The Force Awakens. We grew up poor, so we never got to do many things like that. It felt good to finally be in a place in life where I could take my dad out to lunch in a movie, and seeing his face as he saw the first movie he'd seen since Return of the Jedi, and react to the 3D. So that's from Patrick. A pretty good day in his life. That sounds like a good day. And from Jordan, from Oklahoma City, who shares this pretty good day with us, which came from a Facebook post he made at one point. This morning, I had the means to get to work. She got nifty hoodies, a steak lunch, and paid. I also finished moving into a new place today, a place closer to one of my sisters, so we can watch weekly shows we hook each other on, and I can see the nephews and niece more often. A place far more rural than I'm used to, so I can look up at the beautiful night sky and enjoy the stars a little more. A place without close neighbors, so I can practice trombone and piano without getting irrational and silly levels of performance anxiety. Life isn't perfect, and it's easy to dwell on that sometimes. But in actuality, I'm still pretty blessed. That's from Jordan. A lot of you guys have written in things, and I'll be reading more as we go. But if you've got a pretty good day you want to share, send it to mail@pocketsfullofsoup.com. That's mail@pocketsfullofsoup.com. A pretty good day is our new show here at Pockets, and I hope you're enjoying it. We're going to continue to figure out how this is all going to work together. But in the meantime, your support and your patronage, your subscriptions, all those things mean a lot. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.